Welcome to the Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast here. Just thought I'd take a quick minute and explain to you sort of a bit of the delay here. It was just really kind of an odd situation. I turned on I put all the settings up and ready to go, and I got the message from Twitch that the things were not quite up to speed yet. So, pardon me for the slight delay. So, welcome to Dream Labs. Dr. Contrast here. I hope we're going to have a little bit of fun today. I just we can switch gears and go into a process where we're actually going to take a look at moving into some things. For example, looking at Logitech mice concept sketches. I think, let me preface as to why I'm going to take that approach today. There's some things in the past few sessions we've been going into some pretty elaborate rendering systems and the like. And hey, how you doing there, Doug? How's everything? Excuse me as I clear my throat there. Sorry for the slight delay, Doug. We just had a little bit of information coming from Twitch that things weren't setting up quite properly, so I had a little bit of a delay here. But as stated in the intro, I think we're going back into some just basic concept sketches here today on some Logitech mice systems, just looking at form generation. And the rationale behind it all is that in the past we've been doing some pretty elaborate rendering systems for like the G12 series and other product work, and it gets to the place where it might be a bit much to kind of go through. And I'm not opposed to doing the rendering work. I just think we go nice back and take a step back and do some real quick little thumbnail sketches on a very simple, small organic form like a Logitech mouse or mice systems, and looking at how to begin to put the process together. So we'll just spend a little bit of time going through some real fast, just some lead pencil sketches on some 11x17 bond, just generating shape and going through the process of working with one simple form. So here we go. We're just going to lay out some things here. Just going to get basically a round form like so. Just has that kind of character to it. And then you start there, for example, and you think, well, how do you begin to divide this thing up? Well, when I do something like that, what I begin to see is the following. I see a center line going through it like so, then a section going through it, but it's very round. So it's almost like an ovoid of some sort. So I come back in and begin to look at this thing and say, oh, how do we break this shape up? Do a little mouse system. Let's do this. Put a little bit of circle on top of that guy. Strengthen that just a touch. And let's bring in this little design line back into this thing. And then take it back and return it. And come back out. Kick this back just a bit. Real loose and gesturely. I want to really concentrate today on just getting some real simple little forms down and just doing some real quick little pencil sketches to get this guy to come together. I'm going to come back into this little cavity here. Let's draw back into it again. Come right back through it and just put a little bit of tone in this thing. Just kind of put a little bit of this and just a change of pace and get the tempo down. A little bit of recess in that guy. That tells me a bit of a hollow in there. Just kind of clear up the outside of the line. So come back in again. Very feathery. Come back a little bit of surface on top of this. Strengthen some of the lines up a bit. Again, draw through it, being very gesturally. Come back in again, maybe a little bit of a digital eye that kind of sits back in the center of that little alcove, and then that comes back in again. Real strong design. Let it come back in and just get some graphics in this guy. There it is. There. Just moving around it. And then oftentimes, just a little bit of light source indication where that guy's going to fly the thing off. Just a nice, simple little form study here. And then maybe just a little bit of touch of real light little surfaces here. Just grabbing in some of those shapes, a little more strength in this line, bring it back a little bit of this undercut. Then looking at it, for example, in the side view, just coming back in here, an elevation, just a side elevation, a lot of slope, change the character of that. Come back into this tail section here, bring that right into place. Then right back out of it again, recess, back to home base. Again, notice, not a lot of attention being paid to real solid detail, but just nice little gesture sketches to get this guy to read. This backside form, a little bit of tone in here. And there it is. Maybe another little design line added here. Just changing its character. Put a bit of tone inside of that. And again, looking at it in the plan view. Right down the center line. This little surface here comes back, is almost back in this corner here. Let's kind of cheat this understory here. Let's kind of come back and a little bit of that into it. A little bit of a trailer. Come back in and tone this just a bit. Again, real loose little sketches. How you can just put an idea down. We're getting a little bit more, a little tighter on this side of the shadow. Notice working all the surfaces all at once here. Just a nice heavy line around the base of this thing. Let it fade up into here. Turn it just a bit. A little bit of strength in that line weight. Bring it around. And just lose it. Little indication of the surfaces they're doing. Again, notice animation, a little bit of light source on top of that guy. Coming in from this side. And again, if you want to put a light source, a little bit of shadow on this guy, just come out here. Do a little composition study here with this little mouse study here. There it is in elevation. And there's a triad. Just a nice little combination study of all three surfaces coming together here. How you been, Doug? So staying pretty busy there and staying good and healthy, I hope. There we are. So there's a one little set here. Let's come back in and go the other way. Let's come back and just come back and notice I'm going to turn the paper around, get this down. Again, come back to that center line. Just give myself a guide to work with. Very round shape, just kind of nice and lightly inking that in or drawing through it, so to speak. Now let's come back in and do another variation. Maybe this is a large volume here. Again, it comes back in, and there's a bit of a recess in this guy. So it does that. And up on top here, right down that center line, might be another little aspect that does this. It comes back in and cuts back. And notice, just really free and easy. Coming back in and just getting a texture change. Maybe up front here is a little bit of a wheel system. You kind of plug that in, just indicate where that might go. Again, there's a basic gesture where to get this thing done. Yep, this is the best part of my day. Yeah, mine too, Doug. It's good to have you on board. Again, just simple little sketches. Now, same process again. Let's put a light source on this thing. Coming in from this side here, let's going to put a little tone in this guy. That gets more lead. Tighten it down just a bit. Recess that in. Maybe there's a bit of a recess in this guy. Let's take that little highlight in there. And again, just a bit of tone here on this half side of that little piece right there. And then you got this little piece up on top. And let's go ahead and just put a little bit of section in this guy. Comes in, comes up, rolls over the top of that form. Just a nice simple gesture here. Just gotta get this guy to work here. A little deeper in this shadow. Again, the whole purpose of today's stream is to get into the habit of really doing some really interesting, just really fast gesture sketches that have a personality about them. We're not looking for actually, does it fit the form or does it fit the hand? We're looking for exploratory just sketches here on what this form might begin to transfer into once we start to look at different shape and surfaces to deal with. Then we come back in and put the ergonomics behind it and then validate it and so forth. But in the meantime, I mean, look how quick and gestural that shape is. Again, a little bit of highlight on top here. Run that through. A little bit of surface on top of that. Look how really animated those sketches are. But they're beginning to tell a story. And I think that's the most important thing about doing some sketch work or concept work. What's your story? What's behind the process here? Let's come back in again and just do this. It's going to open it up again. Very simple round forms to deal with here. Again, coming back to that key line is right there. That line is critical. That one tells me where the center line of this form is. Now I'm going to how to divide it up. I'm going to begin to break it in. So let's take advantage of something like that and let's bring this shirt in here. Draw through it, get the contact over here. And again, notice it rounds off. Why does it round off? Because that surface is round. And when we go through the process, I think that's why today's stream to me is extremely interesting, because what happens when we go through the drawing process, oftentimes we will kind of look at a shape and then we'll kind of decide, well, is it going to go this way or that way? But I think from the very beginning, I've said this from the very beginning of my career, I've been taught by individuals who are really powerful in this whole skill set of conceiving ideas and so forth. They made a comment that will live in infamy. And I think, and it simply went like this: know the end from the very beginning. And that doesn't mean you have it all set in space and it's going to come out perfectly. Perfection is not attainable. By translation, what they were saying was simply this: know the end from the beginning. Have an image in your mind's eye. Begin to see it in the third dimension, and cerebrally speaking, see it in the third dimension, and then begin to carve into it, for example, and know what it's beginning to look like. Now, and I'll say this too, I've used this in very many teaching processes as well. You'll find it very true in many, many cases. Now, you can know the end from the beginning, but as you go through the journey, things will change, and it'll adjust. That, to me, is creativity talking back to us. That's telling us, well, it should go this way. The surface is dictating this and not that. That's an error of commission, so to speak. So those are the things that are so subtle that we don't ever talk about when we go through the drawing process. We go through the sketch process, hoping that it'll all work. Well, I hope I can say this with a lot of confidence, and I'm certainly not trying to be arrogant or indifferent about this comment. I want to know when I start a sketch, I know exactly where I'm going. Now, does that mean I'm going to be right? Not at all. But I've got a vision. And once that vision starts to partake of itself, I adjust to it so it becomes stronger. I am not in control, believe me. If we get to a place where we think we're in control over this process, we're really sadly mistaken. Let's go back to this. A little bit of light source again, a little bit of highlight on that guy. There it is. Draw through it again. Let's get advantage of this. Let's take a look at what might happen with this. Now, let's say I keep that right where it is. Now, maybe in this case, that's a very simple as draw through it. Now, from back here, I'm going to come back in and add some character lines. Okay, bring that into play. I'm going to come back into the backside line again. Come back into this one, 2, and into 3. 3 speed lines. Let me turn it upside down for just a moment here. There it is. There it is. And one more to add. Just some simple little conveyance of speed lines. This might be a texture change, could be a color change, but it puts a little bit more character into that form. Now look at that simple addition of 3 lines that follow that form. And the reason I drew that circle inside that shape to tell me how that form rolls around. Now the second part, let's go back into here. Now we kick this around and do this. Maybe this has that type of an aspect. Let's go back in again and build this up. And a little bit of section change. And it does this, comes around, fades away, closest to me, beep up the weights as it moves away, and there it is. Now, from this side, notice where my light sources come from, over here, which means I can drop a shadow right in through here. And very simply, just to ground it, come right back in and say, there it is, sitting on the ground plane. I'll get back to that in a moment. Kind of fill this in just a touch. Notice how we're putting more weight in some of the accents and really telling the story about what I want people to see as opposed to, well, you know, maybe I should fill it all in. No, never do that. There's no mystery in that at all. Let's come back and tone this just a bit. You know, lucid. Today's lesson, all about laying down the story of a sketch. How do you build it? What's involved in it? What am I looking for? What do I want to leave out? There are so many things happening in this surface. These changes, for example, let me turn this upside down again just for a moment and just bring up some line weight down below here. Let's just kind of beef that up and settle it. And there it is on the ground. And there we are. Well, Mr. Riveting, you're the doctor in this. What do you think so far? Is this making sense for you? If you're still there, I hope. Very cool. Let me know, Doug. Come back and carry on just a little bit. There I am there. Let's kind of switch gears here just a little bit. Let's go the other route. Let's kind of go back in and say, all right, what if we did this? What if we come back in and just had this kind of a form, looking right at it? And this comes right down to the pike. There's a cross section there. Those are the 2 surfaces I'm going to work with right there. I'm looking right at it. Then put a section right through it. So there's my center line, and there's my center line. I'm going to break it up just a bit here. Now I'm going to slice this. I'm going to come back in here and do this. Put a real strong design line through it, beef it up just a bit, a little stronger. Now let's take that same shape, and for what it's worth, how are we going to do this? We just want, let's put a little bit of undercut and come back into this. Draw through it, come back into that undercut, take that back, and come out of here with a spoon, and then there it is right there. A little bit of shadow in this guy. Bit of an undercut. Now right up front here, let's see what we've got here. Now let's do this. Let's trench this thing. A little bit of recess part here, and draw through it. A little recess in there. Might be a little bit of a lighting system, so we're kind of tone that in. Notice how I'm using that center line to really indicate, and let's drop that center just a bit. Look how that whole shape changed as a result of putting together a little bit of structure. And again, right through it. Drawing line, shadow line, contour line. Pardon me as I go around. Now again, just a little bit of that around it. That shape. This comes now. All my construction lines show Why? Because I think it's important to tell a client oftentimes, and I'm sure, Doug, you'll agree with this, you're going to tell your story. How did you arrive at that sketch? So you show these little things that you're working with to kind of describe your vocabulary. And what you're working with as you go through a certain sketch series. So those are little things that make a huge difference. It's not all about just, let's draw this through just a bit here to get that down in shape. There it is there. You know, those little forms come together there very, very rapidly. And those are little studies in terms of, again, stressing today's stream on how to lay down a sketch, structurally speaking, going through some things with it and the like. Very, very intriguing and so on. So let's do a little sketch over here again. Let's come back the other way. A little page of composition stuff here. Put a bone line in this thing. Let's kind of come back off that. Let's get that center line in place. Let's come off that bone line with a real strong spear. Again, notice I just put a sail on it, or a kite on this thing. Now let's do this. Let's come back in the other way. Come back in from that part and roll it back. And then draw through it. Show you where that other side's going to come right back into here. Now let's put that little line in through here. Let's put that section line in. Put a tone in this thing. Bring around this here. Let's change the texture here. Now let me get that back in place here. There it is. Again, a little bit of shadow. And let it fade. I'm going to play up these line weights a little bit more. Look how simple that is. Yet all of a sudden, hopefully it's beginning to tell a story for us. Come back, pardon me, as I turn this a little bit on the side here to get a little more tone in this thing. Bring it around. And there it is. I mean, look at the variation in theme we're getting there as a result of, again, going into this thing with just a nice series of, let's get the gesture down. Let's think through this thing and not really push a lot of finesse or detail. Just looking for shape and different ways of looking at this thing. So let's try this. Let's come back again. And maybe it's this. A little bit of flat portion back here. Let's kind of put a bridge on this thing. Let's kind of pull off of that. Let's get that going. Put a little bit of roundness into it. Again, off of this, let's put that thing into a mound of some sort. It does that. We've got these little trailers coming off of this guy. So now let's get that shape down. There's my center line right there. Center line through it, and then right there, that's my center line. That's the spine that's going to help me build this thing. So as I go back into this thing, let's go back in again. Let's come back into here. Draw through it. Again, let's come back in and let's pick a point. Let's open that up just a bit. Let's get a little bit of a wedge right there. Now let's take that line and run it right back into that form right there. Over the center line. Tuck it back. Roll that in. A little bit of an offset there is really going to be helpful. Now this little channel here, take that paddle off there. Put a tone back in here. That's where it sits on the surface. Comes around the shape itself. Fills in the blanks. Again, just looking at variations on theme. Back into the side here. Again, over the top of this thing. Again, look at that little offset right there. It tells me there's a little bit of an offset in this shape. That into that. You notice how I left a little bit of highlight right in there. Didn't fill it in. Just kind of clean this up just a bit here. Take this around the bend. Put a bit of beef in this thing. Let's kind of get a little bit of surface to it. There's a little bit of a trailer to it. There it is. And this is going to go here. Right around here and just tone that back. There it is. And there it is. I mean, look at the variation in content here that we're getting as a result of just going through a very simple series of nice gesturely sketches. I'm putting form down. Let's go back in here, just kind of tune it a little bit more. Get this guy to read just a little bit more powerfully. A lot of scribbling in there, but that's okay. We're telling our story. Go back and hit it again. There we are. So there's a series of little thumbnail sketches here. Hey, Doug, just a quick question for you. Is this that making sense for you in terms of how to put together a gesture or a form, or how to, you do a lot of product design work. Is that helping to kind of get the story across here, if you're still there? Let's just wait for a response here, Doug. If you're all set here. Good. I'll move along here just in case. There's a certain page. Again, we started here and just put, again, the whole premise is to get that form in. Let's just do this upper corner. To get that circle down. Let's do this. We're going to go to the circle. That's the basic overall form. Now we can flatten it off with a baseline here. Maybe we want to extend it. Kind of lift this just a little bit more of a stone type look there. And then maybe we just put a harsh line across this guy. Bring that in here. That's how we started. Just look how nice and gesturing and simple that is. It just really takes a time of just exploring. And I've noticed I'm not being really tight white knuckle here. I'm just really being gestury with these forms. Let's put this ground line down. Hey, thanks, Doug. I appreciate the input there. There it is. There's my baseline. There's my. Let's kind of bring this back and just do this. Let's scoop this off just a little bit. There's a texture change here. A bit of a hood surface up and through here. And again, let's put a little surface in this thing. Comes up, does that. Nice and easy. Look how my hand is just moving right through the entire, keeping a very simple stroke pattern all the way through this. Again, I think that's another part of the sketch story that's never talked about. Talking about direction, talking about tone, and how things begin to really begin to line up as again, what we're looking at here, and I'm sorry for the stammering here, but I just want to make sure we communicate clearly. What's happening here in almost every one of these sketches, as poorly done as they're executed, just nice and loosely done, there's a certain simple rhythm beginning to take place. Notice, common direction, common direction, common direction, common direction. I'm following the surfaces. The surfaces are dictating the shapes. So there's the first set. Let's kind of move on here to another page here. We're going to get rid of this guy, and we'll come back to those in a moment. There's A. Let's go. Let's keep moving here. What if we wanted to change the tempo of this thing? Come back in and said, all right, let's do this. What if we come back in again and just really get real lucid with this thing? This is a nice big circle here. Let's come back in, put that center line in place. Again, those two gestures right there begin to tell the entire story. And I'm sorry for being redundant, but again, that circle, that form, we don't know what that's looking. Is that flat? Is it round? Is it ovoidal? We don't know what that is until we put a section into it on the horizontal, longitudinal, then draw through it. That's the basic form right there. It's very round, ovoidal, and it's very elliptical in the cross section. So that's going to help me. So once I know that, I can come back in and do the following. I can get this. I can bring this shroud over and just cheat this form. Draw that through and cheat this shape over by doing that. Put a little bit of hood on it, a little bit of hood surface. Come back here, step that surface down a little bit, come through it again, and then take this, pardon me, and create an envelope in here that looks like this. Here's the envelope. Bring that around, put this in surface, tone that away, and tone this away. As I turn this around just a bit here, a little bit of surface in this thing. Now look how that simple gesture right there changed the entire character of that form. So I come around again, bring this over the top, bring this on through, a little bit of core line through it. Now changing this, I can come back in now and do the following. It's this now into that much sharper. And again, A little bit of tone in here. Let me turn this upside down and we'll just kind of move along here. A little bit of shadow definition. What I want you to notice, again, is the consistency of the pattern. Look at the pattern we're setting up here. Very diagonal. Following where that light source is, not light source, but the actual shape itself that I started with. There it is, and there's here. Let's kind of beef that up a bit. Let's just move this around. Put a little bit of tone back in through it. Let's kind of tune that line in down below. There we are. A little bolder here. And again, a little more surface in this guy. And again, from behind. A bit of highlight here, and there it tells me where the light source is coming from. I mean, just simple, very quick little theme studies here, but really playing up this whole idea of high contrast. Again, let's go back to this first. Look at the amount of contrast I'm pushing from one to the other. A lot of paper coming through. I'm not filling it on. I'm letting the eye foreclose all that material. And I'm coming back in and doing the same thing, for example, high contrast again, darkest darks against lightest lights. These are the things that we need to talk more about, and that's why I decided today, in this stream today, is to pull back and so forth from rendering a little bit and take a nice, simple, but yet difficult to illustrate element like the mouse, the digital mouse, Logitech mice systems, and look at how we kind of play them through and how to work with them. So let's go back and through. Let's do a little elevations, a couple elevations here. What if we did this? Ground line down, come right back in again. Now let's just put the gesture down. Notice I'm changing the slope. Now out of that slope. Hey, Shadow, how you doing, Chief? Good to see you. I don't know if you had a chance to bring up the speed here. We just started a series of little mice sketches. By the way, I hope you're feeling better, Shadow. Had a lot of work to do in the last couple of sections here. As we discussed yesterday, we went through a whole process of putting together things, saying, does this mouse go Mach 5? No, Mach 10. So that's where we're at here. But I'm just going back to after Wednesday's stream. Hey, Shadow, how are you, man? Thank you. Mach 10, that'll do. I want to go back and review some things here for those of you coming in just a bit behind schedule here. Thank you for joining us, by the way. Really do appreciate it. It's nice. It's nice to know that every now and then when I go through a series of drawings, for the last few streams, I'm doing a lot of rendering work, a lot of pastel and marker and so forth. I just made a decision after Wednesday's stream, as much fun as that was, I thought, let's pull back a little bit and get into the architecture of putting together an idea. I use the term architecture because I firmly believe that every time we go through a drawing process, whether it's mighty or meager, it requires a lot of thought. A lot of thinking goes into it. And again, I made a comment earlier, Shadow, about the whole process of drawing. It's interesting to me how it all begins to come together because I've always said, I've been taught to know there's one truth, and that is simply this: know the end from the beginning. Now, that does not mean we're going to be perfect and know it all the way through, but get a vision down, then pursue that vision. And while you go through that vision, things will change. Creativity will talk to you back and forth about how it all how it comes, and it'll change. And that's the adaptability we're after. So I've met a lot of people who will not change their precept at all because that's their idea. By God, that's final. That's fatal. The whole idea is to get a vision, follow through with it, and allow creativity to talk back to you and make those changes. That's the reason for going back to a very simple stream today of just simple little pencil sketches on the architecture of putting together an idea. How do you think through it? What's it telling you? How do you begin to move through it? Where do you put the accent? What do you put into it, and what do you leave alone? So let's go back. There's page one, and we moved into these guys. Take a simple form. We've already started here. Let's finish this up here. Let's teardrop this thing. Let's kind of put a little slope in this thing. Let's go back in again. Let's change a little bit of tail back here. Let's take off on that, a little bit of offset. Let's take that offset and kind of pull back and ramp this thing just a little bit more. Almost that. Now let's come back in and change that character line by doing the following. It does this. Now it rolls back. Now it's getting softer. Look at the counterpoint there. It comes off the nose just a bit. It just lifts just a touch. Let's kind of pull that back. Comes off, rolls back again. Then there's another secondary form comes off for this tail. Let's kind of sharpen that up a little bit. That comes in and does a fun. Now that gets really symbolic. Now that gets real sharp. Look at the gesture change there. Let's kind of pull that back a little bit more. Look at the gesture change on that mouse. All of a sudden, it takes on a whole new personality. Oh, let me see here. Yeah, I'm not hear that. Not hear that. Yeah, don't paralyze yourself with the details. Yeah, that's right. Very well said, Shadow. Don't paralyze yourself. Another way of saying that is this. A great guy, Legacy, always tells us, don't overanalyze it because you paralyze it. And that's a very simple thing to look at here. Now, again, once you have these surfaces down, now I've got the opportunity to come back and really do a neat job of putting a little bit of surface work in here. There, notice, being consistent, following the shape, the pattern. This is a flat surface, so it's doing this. It comes back and it fades. A little bit of undercut into this. A little bit of highlight right in through here. Look at that shoulder right there. It tells me that actually comes down, over, into flat, and then disappears. Up, down, shoulder, flat, disappears. Those stroke patterns, those lines tell a story. And it's amazing how it all begins to come together here once you analyze them from that point of view. So, pardon me, I'm losing my voice here. So let's go back in again. An elevation study here. Let's do this. There's an elevation. Let's go back to a round again. What if I did this? Go back to that same basic form. Come back in and just blunted it off. Got a little sharper with it here. Let's blunt that off. Let's put an accent line right through this thing. Now let's go the other route. Let's add something else that really tells a story. Let's put this into place. And let that come into play here. Now that comes in and does this. Now let's raise that up. Now look at that. Simple two forms coming together, just doing some really cool stuff. Now on top of this, now there's a split line right here. Let's bring that split line into play. So you've got this dart coming through that shape. That goes a little bit deeper. That'd be a color accent of some sort. Stops there, comes into this guy, and this is where the magic is. That now has a recess for a grip that does this. How cool is that? I mean, look how unique that is. Pardon me. Let me rephrase that. I don't believe the sketch is unique, but the way you develop a surface and change things as a result of being able to be very fluid and not so rigid with the pen work or trying to dictate it ahead of schedule. You can't predict this stuff. Yeah, these are just really interesting form studies in terms of putting a simple little thing like a mouse together. And I think that's the key here, is to get that to read very well. Come back in, let's just kind of finish off a little bit more of this notice pattern. Now I'm coming right around the shape. Now I'm going to change the stroke pattern. Why? Because that section is that section comes in, drops flat, and then rolls out again. That's why the pattern change going around the surfaces. No, I'm following the shapes. And that's what's all come. Hey, Chip, how are you? Good to see you, Chief. Sorry for the delay here. Pardon me just a moment. Oh, I rough go with my voice here today. Pardon me. Just for your benefit, Chip, we're doing a real quick retro, going back a little bit in time here, just going back to some basic form studies here. I'm just doing some digital Logitech mice studies. Really interesting how we've been doing a lot of rendering work, and I won't overstate the process here, but just to bring up to speed here, Chip, we're going back into what's it take to get the architecture of a sketch done. And I chose today to go back to just basic rendering or just ideation stuff, so kind of quick, fast sketches to get the message across. And I think the whole message here is to really work within the system, be very fluid, be very exploratory, don't be rigid with it, explore. And I think the comment, if I ever put a theme together on this today's stream, it's a very simple message, and it's this. And it is, know the end from the beginning. Have a vision, work through it, and come right back enough and really begin to nail this thing down in terms of what the story you're trying to tell is to your client. So there's the first pass of very quick sketches. I just work with a circular pattern, a center line, then begin to carve in the shape. So I'll go back through that in just a moment here. So that brings you up to speed there, Chip. Good to have you on board. Now let's go back and do this. Horseshoes and nuclear weapons closed, right? Hey, Chip. There we are. So there it is. There's a simple little gesture here. Now let's put a more tone in this thing. Let's come back in and just put a little bit of this ground line down. Let's come back in with the same pattern, the same kind of technique. There it is right there. It comes back in and rolls right now. A little bit of surface up on top. And there I am. A little bit of shadow underneath it. Let's kind of put some strength back in this thing. Let's let that shadow, that overhang come right into play here. There it is right there, gang. And look how, again, notice how the balance is there, is really starting to speak to us in terms of darkest darks next to lightest lights, next to the lightest lights, next to darkest darks. I mean, that whole pattern, darkest darks next to lightest lights, that whole pattern, that's a Rembrandt, that's Rembrandt's whole theory on light. Does it work in industrial design work? Absolutely, because it's a natural physical property. So there we are with that guy. Now let's come back in and do a little study here in terms of, let's change the venue just a bit. Let's come back in here and say, all right, what if I want to go this route? What if I want to come back and do let's go back and something very, very stealth-like, very geometric. I come back in and create, again, this is my platform. I'm going to start there. I'm going to come off of that platform with a nice little vertical. Then I'm going to come back in and just create a dart right across the top of this thing. Let's come out, lift it up into a peak, and right back down again. Notice, That's my center line. Again, I've been really harping all stream long about having a center line down. Having a center line down, creating that whole portion. So that's what I'm going to begin with here. Now let's fill it in. Let's come back in through here, do this. And I'll come back and just create another line under this guy, and then connect the dots. I'm going to come back over here and create a facet, create another facet, and then connect the dots. Now let me ink that in just a bit. Facet. Now this is much more stealth-like. We'll come back in again, create a little bit more of this truncation. There it is there. There it is there. And there it is there. So there's that section here. It's that. Now it comes back in again. That surface comes down to ground. That gives me another line here. I'm going to come right back out of this. Extend that just a bit. Take that back. Into break. Into break. And then come back into this thing with another little underside that does the following. There it is. Now, let's put some form in this thing. Lots of construction. Working my way through it. Now, undercut. Into shadow. Surface. Let's cheat that side just a bit more. Into surface, into shadow. There's a break there. There's a break here. And a facet change here. Same pattern. There it is. Now, roller system, cut into it. Oop, pardon me. Look how that whole thing changed as a result. Let's kind of get this guy just a little more shadow in here. Pardon me, I moved this paper around quite a bit. Again, there it is. Get the shadow in this place. Does that, that, and that. Look at the shadow, how it's going to describe this form. Watch this. Wouldn't that be cool if that were a really neat, for example, this guy right here, that whole portion right there is like an indigo blue or a bright red or a yellow, and it just when you start to move it around and begin to chase the thing on the pad itself, that could be really cool. Again, another variation on theme, getting a lot more stealth-like. So very, 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 really extremely faceted. Now let's do this. What does that look like in the other view? Let's do a couple of variations here. We're going to go stealth. Let's take a look at this thing. It's going to come up here. I'm going to come back and get the wedge. There's where I started. I'm going to come back in and change the character of that wedge by doing this. Getting a front nose. There it is. Changing that character into that. Now we're going to come back in again and break it from here. Come right back and change this to this. And just let's finish this off by doing that. Look how simple. Oh, that could be cool. Just as is right there. Look at the gesture on that guy. Maybe you reach it the other way. Then you go forward with this thing. That's what we're looking at here. So we're looking at ways of exploring using the mechanics of drawing to kind of set things up a little bit here. Let's do this. Just it's going to kind of get this all set here. I'm going to come back to this. Let's leave that right where it is and come right back up and do this. A little bit of a variation on a theme. Again, same process. Into deep shadow. Down the ground line. Into facet. Let's go the other way because it's a negative undercut. Let's do this. Let's reinforce that a little bit more. A little stronger shadow right through here. Let's get that design line in place. Pardon me as I turn this upside down again. Get these surfaces to read a little bit. There it is there. Come back up on top. Again, a little bit lighter pattern, changing the surfaces now because that's going the other direction. So we're going to go lighter and let it fade. There's my break line right there. Down to the ground. There's another very strong, forceful shape that you're doing. Dire, futuristic dawn, right? Yeah. Sacred dagger. It does. Well said there. Let's go back just a bit here. Let's go back in and just say, all right, let's go back to some round surfaces there. Let's do this. There it is. Let's go back to some basic work here. Gone through the stealth variation. No, maybe it's a simple matter, a combination of both, maybe stealth and round. So let's get that center line out. Again, we talked about that quite a bit. There's my center line right there. That's a powerful line. Again, it's going to be very round in nature. Draw through it. Those two variations give me the whole key to build the form here. Now let's come back in through here. Let's do this. Let's come back up that center line and start with a circle right up here. Let's bring that right around and do this. Let's bring that around and do this. Let's spoon this off and just change that character right there. Let's lay that in. Notice, look at the number of lines over the top of that sketch. Hey, Horton, how are you? Thank you very much, Horton. That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being on board. That's cool. So notice, let me go back again. Notice how I started. Circle, center line, section. Lots of lines, scribbling right. I mean, I'm searching as I go here. I'm not going to fall in love with something until I bring it out. And let's take this out of here and do that. Let's come back and just put a tail off of this, off that center line. Let's do this. Let's bring it back. Let's come back and cut that in and do the following. Look at how that shape changed dramatically right there. There's the tail. There it is. There's my new center line right there. I mean, look at the changes made as a result of just exploring form. Boy, it's good to have you on board, Horton. How's everything going for you? I hope Scott's still enjoying his monster study. Bring some more on. That was fun to do. So here we go. Ready? All set. So here we are. Now that I've got that, I'm going to come back in and just change now. Here it is right here. There's my new center line. There's my new area there I'm going to utilize for the actual eye itself. That's that to that. I'm going to come back in and get that undercut to work, and then that tail to work right there. That's all part of the whole process. Let's come back in through here. A little bit of shadow, and again, notice the consistency of the stroke pattern. One direction. When you start to mix things up, it gets real confusing in a hurry. Scotty loves it. He wants it in his room. Yay! All right, that's cool. Tell Scotty for me that hang on to that thing. About another 10 years, it'll be worth about $1.45. So there we are. Notice, gang, how cool that is. Just a little bit more of this. Yeah, we come back in, and there it is. A little bit of softness into this. And just for what it's worth, a lot of lines, sometimes you put a little theme sketch together, put a little bit of backdrop into it, so you're not killing the thing with a lot of heavy line weights, and just let it fly. I mean, look at that. Simple as that sketch is, I hope it tells a story. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the creative process. What it does, it begins to, it's inspiring because you see things unfold. You start to see things take shape. You start to see what the yays and nays are and how to begin to approach it. It's just amazing how it takes all the strain off the process and it puts it right down in context. And the bottom line for me is always this: every time I'm on live on stream here, which I enjoy greatly, and I thank you for your time to be with me. What I look forward to on Monday, Wednesday, Friday is just to have fun. No stress, no strain. Just getting right in there and having fun with this stuff. There's no need to be stressful over it. It's a learning process. I've learned more now in the last year than I could ever begin to imagine in the last 26 years of my life. I'm only 27, but I'm hanging in there. So here we go. We're going to put a little bit of shadow in this thing. Let's put a little bit of this. Let's put a little bit of tone in this thing now, just to kind of separate up. Just a little bit of, maybe that tells me that the section of this thing is just a bit of a bevel break. But notice, look how that begins to tell a story. There's enough melody in that to hold it together. Darks against lights. A lot of draw through. What I'm telling the viewer is, I send sketches out to my clients all the time sometimes. I've done in the past, and I continue to do so now. I'll send sketches like this out to them. And they'll look at you and they'll go like, wow, how in the world, that's cool. There's so much going on. Well, I wanted to show you how I think. I respect you enough to know as my client to let you know, here's how I got there. I'm not going to start to hide certain things and hope that you'll love it. I just send them out there as clean and as dirty as they are so they get the story done. So here we go. Let's come back and put a little bit of shadow in this thing. A little rounding through here. And then come back in again, just put a bit of tone in this thing and settle this shape down. Again, the purpose of today's stream, understand how to work with architecture and how to become very gesturally. And don't get caught up and try to be so finessed. Just lay down your ideas and put the process down and let it take its own story. Turn this upside down, strengthen the line right down through here, and separate that from ground. I mean, just simple little weight changes begin to tell a story as well. I mean, look at that. As simple as that sketch is, just fun. So, okay, one more time. Ready, gang? Here we go. Same process. Let's go the other route. Let's elongate this thing. Really have fun with this. Let's go the other way. Elongate it. Let's elongate this thing. Let's come back in and say, okay, there's my center line right here. I'm going to peek that out. Let's come back in and spoon this out and out. Once again, I've said this all stream long to hope to not bore you to death. That center line tells me how to build the shape. It's going to tell me where to go right and left, where the weights are going to fade, where I'm going to increase, where I'm going to decrease. Again, I can't stress this enough, folks. Drawing to me is magical because it requires incredible concentration. I don't have that, but I'm learning how to get there. The concentration is overwhelming. You're thinking about 20 steps ahead. And by the way, when you're 20 steps ahead, you're hoping that the next step is the right one. And I've never really felt that need to say that. And pardon me, let me correct that. I've never felt the need to worry about adjusting. Because I've trained, I've been really fortunate to work with tremendous people who've taught me a great skill and one of the best lessons in drawing. Never hesitate. Go through it. If you make a mistake, that's where the miracles live. You learn something from making those mistakes. So those of you out there who are going through the whole process of drawing and going through the agonies of, oh, gee, this isn't right, that is not right, do not give up on that. That's part of the learning process. That's where the strength is. That's what we build on it. So let's go back to this sketch. Center line, build this out, open that up just a bit. Now I came back in and let's return that. Let's return that and do this. Let's come back in again with a cut line underneath it, and let's put another backdrop in this thing. Let's do this. Come back and that little spike. Let's take that thing in perspective. Roll that underneath. Come back to this, and just again, maybe that does this. That opens up. It's a little bit more of a peak to it. There it is. That's going to do that. That's going to do that, and this is going to do this. Man, look how cool that is! Wow. Pardon me for getting excited, folks. It's just some really neat stuff. In the shadow, in the button, in the crest, and again, surface down below, and again, surface change. Look at this. Same pattern. Pardon me as I turn this upside down. A bit of line strength. Let's tone this back a bit. It tells me it's recessed. A bit of shadow underneath here, a little bit more strength, a bit of an undercut. Let's let the viewer see that. And if there's a texture change in here, great. Let's just kind of put that off, which tells me that that whole front section is beveled. I mean, look at that. Is that fun or what? So there's a series of compositions there that just kind of begin to tell a story about this whole idea of putting together shapes and surfaces and forms and exploring the idea of just developing the architecture of a sketch. Architecture, to me, is a critical word here in the process of drawing. Architecture in a sense that you build a story, you build a sketch. It's one line upon another, it's one thing upon another, and so on and so on. It never gets to the place where you ever get to the place where it's complete. And if it does complete itself, then I think we're in real trouble. I think, to me, it's always a rolling story. You can always change the chapters. You can always turn a new page. You can always look at certain things that are extremely intriguing for you. So let's go back and add one more little thing here. We'll just kind of, unless you have any questions. So am I communicating okay so far? Those of you who are still out there, communicating all right? Making sense? Let's hope, hope. Nope. All right, we'll just kind of move along here. So let's kind of go back and just look at the, so very quickly here. Well, I just want to go to one sketch and review here. Let's do a simple little sketch here. Let's come back in here and do this. Okay, I'm going to do an elevation. It's going to be side view first. Get that circle down. Draw through the equator of it. Come down to ground line. Change the nature of the thing. Come back in and maybe change the gesture. Come forward and roll it out of there. Now change it again and do this. Now notice, look at that line right there. That just tells me a story. Come back to return it. Underneath that, I'll come back in again. Maybe add something in the back side of this thing. I'm just moving through it. When I go through this process, with that, let me stop right there. When I go through that process, what I'm really looking at is just that my hand doesn't lift off the paper. I'm still searching. I'm changing as I go. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's back to that. Maybe it's into this. Now maybe it's coming back in again, adding another line through here. Then maybe come back in and just change a character and pick this up and do that. Slowly move that around. And just making changes. Elevation here. Let's go down to ground line. Now it sits right there. Maybe this has a foot on it like so, and it has a little bit of this. And I've just changed that so it sits upright. This form underneath. Now, let's put a little bit of heat to this thing. No, it's real scratchy. Surface. A little bit more tone. Undercut. Tells me that surface is underneath. Comes back and picks up this. Down to ground. Underneath. Surface. See that little thing right there? Highlight. That's a shoulder. Let me refer to that in just a moment here. That becomes a shoulder. That shoulder means this. If I were to, let's do this. Let's get a red pen out here and just show you what I mean by shoulder. That clue, that line to that surface, there's a change of direction here. Let's force that up just a bit more. Let's put that in place. That's this coming into that. And just so we show where we are here, let's do this just for what it's worth. Put a little tone behind this thing. I'm losing light here. Hold on a moment and refill. Oh, we're good. Upper. Again, when we're past being consistent, that might be a color change or a material change, but that's going to take that. It's going to take on that. I'm going to come around and give me this. But let's go back to this conversation about the shoulder. That's a shoulder, meaning there's an offset. Now, when I cut a section through the surface, it's going to be this. This is where I'm standing. Let me turn this around here for a moment. I'm standing right here. I come through this shape. I'm going to walk backwards by doing the following. It rolls, comes out to this, does this, picks up that shoulder, comes back in underneath, and comes out again. Look at the difference in surface there. See it? Surface, out, into that shoulder, surface, out, into that shoulder, into the negative, and so on. Why is that shoulder? Because that surface, that shoulder is doing this. It comes back and marries that shape into that shape. That's where you get the offset in the surface. Look at this. If I were to cut these sections, come right back in here. This rolls over, that rolls over, that rolls over, that rolls over. Again, but that surface remains consistent right through here. That's doing that, and that's doing that. And it comes out, and let's go back here and do this. Over that, into the shoulder, into that shoulder, into that wing. That's what that form looks like. Now you come back in, section, out to that shoulder, inside and back out again. I mean, that's pretty, sorry for getting into that right now here, gang, but this is where my station point is right here. I'm standing right there. That's my station point. I'm looking at that form right there by doing that. But that's what's happening, that little shoulder in there. Why is that critical? Talk about the architecture. Again, the purpose of the stream, how to build a constructive sketch to tell your story. Going back to just basic skills of just drawing through something and exploring ideas for this little mouse, this digital mouse system. Let's go back in and put this together. Why is that critical? Because it tells, again, your story. Let's go down the ground line. There's zero or theta. That's it. Now let's go back and do a couple more here, just for what it's worth. Again, there it is. Getting to that surface. Into the round. Get the center line down. Come back off that center. Maybe wing this thing out a little bit. Maybe this has this kind of a character now. line rate change, appendage, tone, maybe a surface change up on top. A little bit of a texture change here. Let's kind of tone that in. And this buttress. And let's go thick and thin in this thing. Maybe a bit of a color change here. Sorry for my silence, gang. I'm make sure we're doing the right thing here. Notice how I'm still honoring that center line as it comes around that curve. There it is. Comes in, rolls around, comes underneath. A bit of shadow in this thing. A bit of shadow. Let's strengthen that baseline up a little bit here. You can tell where the ground is. And there you are. Again, look how that form has been governed by just simple, it looks like a jet. Yeah, it does. Last but not least. Slow it all down here. Maybe it's just a simple matter of doing this. And there you are. There you go, gang. There's a pretty too many people here. It's like too many people also. Meeting time. Oh, okay, sorry about that, Shadow. Well, thank you very much for joining on board while you could here. Jet intake, meeting time, go meet people, Horton Hustle, what? Not Horton was talking to too many people. Hey, thanks very much, gang. I really appreciate it here. And for what it's worth here, I just let's kind of recap here what we have. Very simple process here. We started right here with this guy. And let me just put this in sequence here. This was set one. And again, let me in review here for those of you, for example, who have been very kind to stay on board here. Just looking at this, the whole purpose of today's stream was to pull back from a lot of rendering and get into one simple theme base here, and this is simply this. Very interesting how we all start with, for example, an idea. Well, the idea for the stream today was to get back to the basic thinking process of learning how to build a sketch. What's in it? What do we put into it? What do we have to just what do we need to put into this thing as far as an expression to tell our story? And to me, that's what sketching is all about, to tell a great story about how we think about our world, how we see our world. And these sketches are all built on one simple principle, the architecture of a drawing. And I don't mean that to be, I don't have the answers for that, so don't misunderstand. But the architecture meaning, for example, start with as we did here, we start with a circle, a very round form, then add a center line, then put a section into it, and begin to develop those shapes out of this. The idea behind this whole thing, D12 will move well, D12 will be more well done than what SC did. Yeah, I think so. I hope so as well. So again, thank you so much, gang. But the idea today was to get the architect. So much rendering in the past. I've been doing a lot of G12 interior stuff, marker, pastel, and very complicated rendering work. Nice to come back and get the basics down, and just to hopefully help you and to help me see that drawing is the most important part of the whole process. Getting your sketches down, being very lucid. Taking a simple shape like a Logitech mouse and just developing new ideas for what could it look like and developing shape and form. So there was the first thing we did there, gang. First plate. Now the second plate, let me move this over here, pardon me. Second plate, same concept, just going through some variations on theme, just putting nice compositions together and looking at everything from rounds to changing the architecture of the stance, adding a little more voluptuous form to it, and getting some stealth systems being very sheer. Then taking off on that theme and again, a little bit further, going back to the round combination of sharp and soft. Again, architecture, 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 how to build a drawing. And I've said this about the very beginning of the stream. It comes down to really allowing yourself to know the end from the very beginning. What's the vision? What are we looking for here as far as vision is concerned? That's the second phase. Then the third one, just going back and reviewing where we were here. Look at the difference in some of the forms you get here. Just exploring ideas. And while I'm at it, excuse me, thanks, Doc. Always a blast to watch you start from the simple. Yeah, thanks very much, Shadow. Likewise, I appreciate your time. Hope you have a great meeting with the gang. Tell them I said hello. Last page here is just a simple review of where we were in terms of when we started. Getting the forms to read well, drawing through it, being very lucid with it, not being fearful. If you make a mistake, great. That's where the miracles live. Can't stress that enough, gang. Cannot stress that enough. So all that to say, thank you so much for the time here today. Always a joy to be with you. And for all of you who have been kind enough to stay with me, I hope this has been of some great help to you as much as it has been to me, because I'll be the first one to tell you, I get caught up in some things. I start rendering. I go like a chicken with its head cut off. And I don't take the time to explain things well. So I'm really thankful that you're with me in terms of putting it all together. Streamlabs, join Dr. Yeah, please join us on Streamlabs. For example, I've got my, hey, Zandola, thank you very much. Love having you be on board. It's great to have you and Horton tuning in here today. I was called to this too, so please, I've got a great drawing program on my website. It's called the Beginner Series. If you've got some interest in learning how to put together some of these things we're talking about, please visit my website at drcontrast.com. It's just really interesting how it all comes together here. And then secondly, I am open for commission work. So if you know of anybody who might be looking for certain commissions on works being done, sketches, I do everything from architecture to interior space to housing, product design, automobile, aircraft. Please pass the word. I'd love to get into some commission work with you all. So again, the website, drcontrast.com. And on that website, you'll notice I've got a lot of work that you can tune into the website. You'll see my Instagram account, my YouTube account, and also what we're doing here with Twitch. So I really appreciate the time here, folks. Thank you so much for the dedication. And I'm looking forward to Monday stream. Monday stream, we're going to carry on for Horton's benefit and others like Chip. We're going to carry on with some light source stuff. I hope that made sense for you. We're going to slow it down a little bit on Monday and go back into the lesson, review some things to show you little tricks on how to put the light source together. And then last but not least, always remember to make this clear, because I really believe this with all my heart, folks. You've been great and kind and gracious to join me here today. And I want you to know that every time I go through the process on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's to simply remember to never forget to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Have a great weekend, and we'll tune in. See you Monday at 1:30 on some light source stuff. Take care and all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.